Ta-da! Also, hey, what do you think of the little sticker I have on my mirror? Anyways, this is like a thing of my desk except without the lights because my desk does not have lights. Anyways, if the playback speed for this is, if I talk a little too fast, because I get a lot of comments saying, you talk too fast, slow down. If I don't talk fast, the video will be 30 minutes long. So if that's too much, then just lower the playback speed. Also, I will be putting all the QR codes for the brushes here, so I hope no one asks for the brushes. Alright, so first step is we are selecting the skin color, because this is in my OC, so I had to get the skin color right. I am using the soft brush. So I also want to show you guys what my layers are. My layers are a gray background, which basically covers the entire character, like that. And then I have the line art above it. So what you want to do is you want to clip the first normal layer onto the gray background. So once you select your skin color, it won't go all over the place. Okay, so we are just doing this really messy. And then we are getting a more, like a more pinkish tone to this. We are using airbrush 20, and we're just airbrushing it onto the bottom of the hand, the bottom of that hand, and the middle of it, and the bottom of the face. Also by the eyes and on the nose. If your character doesn't have a nose, then just don't do it on their nose, I guess. Then we're using an even darker, more pigmented pink color for around their eyes more. Then also for the joints of their fingers, since I usually make the joints like a more pigmented reddish color for some reason, or pinkish color. Then back with our soft brush, we are selecting the brush, we're selecting the things that we just had there, and we're using it to color the rest. The reason why we are coloring over is because we want a good balance between hard and light. So hard and light shadows, I mean. So after putting on the very light, soft shadows, not light shadows, then we are going over it with a little bit more of a solid brush to make it look more solid. So also I'm using a darker tone of the skin color just to show the hands have a little more dimension. Also, if you don't know how to pick skin colors or colors in general, I did make a tutorial on that. So, you know, go check it out. It's, I think it's called How to Pick Colors or something like that. I'll probably link it in the description, and if I forget, someone please comment because I'm very forgetful. So we're only coloring the top of their lips since it gives it a very simplistic look. I really like how simplistic anime can be, but I kind of dislike the fact where it looks like they kind of don't have lips, but then I also don't want the character to look like they got super plump lips, so I just do it at the top lip. So we are just using the darker color, more pigmented color, to go where all the shading should be, which is underneath the bangs, by the neck, and everywhere. Then we're using a lighter color, not a white, but the lightest skin color that's on the thing. And this isn't really necessary, but I sometimes try to add a little nostril. Yeah. Now, using the color that I use for the nostrils, I'm using it to define the shapes of everything else. One of the reasons why defining the shapes is very, very, very important, especially for me, is because I don't have very bold line art. As you can see, my line art is not line art, it's sketch. It's some sketchy stuff, man. So now we're just going in with the darker color and darkening some of the shadows that should be darker. Yes. Now, one of the important things that I cannot believe I didn't mention yet is know where your light source is coming from. My light source is coming from kind of the top rightish corner. Yeah. But also slightly behind. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Also, just with the darker shadows, we're going in to give the neck a little more detail. Remember, with shadowing, it's all... Shadowing? Is that even a word? Shadowing. Yeah, it is a word. I'm so stupid. No, I was kidding. I'm a genius. That sounds narcissistic. Anyways, so with shading, it's all about having a lighter shadow, then putting in a medium shadow, then a darker shadow. It's just about gradually getting darker so that you can give your art better values and more contrast. Anyways, oh, I also wanted to say that I started editing my audio, if anyone's noticed. By editing my audio, I mean that I am just not using raw audio anymore. I am like putting on compressor and equalizer and stuff like that. Yeah, since I figured that if I really want to improve my videos, I should look beyond the visuals and into the talking, into the audio. Alright, so as you can see, we're just going in and building up the shadows. Also, when you're making the shadows, it's good to start with very big shapes and then kind of refine them later on. Kind of like you see what I did with the hand was I made that giant shape and then I started going in later with darker shadows and giving it more details and stuff. So it's always better to focus on the big parts of things. So make big shadows and then add the details later. Yes. It's always good to focus on using bigger shapes and things first. So yeah. Also, I'm just cleaning up my sketch a little bit because it's really messy. I know, I should have did this way earlier, but I did, actually. Surprise, it was messier than this, believe it or not. But I didn't know it was like that messy. So I just kept duplicating it and then putting it down because I noticed that the line art wasn't very saturated. I know, I noticed that very, very late, but what do you expect from me? I'm practically blind. Yay. So I'm just going in, refining the sketch a bit. You can completely, like, skip this part if you actually have line art, and if you do have line art, that's amazing. That's incredible. That's epic. Tea good. Good tea. I sound like a caveman. Alright, so now we are going in with the darker shadows, and you know that kind of like shadow thing that they have in anime? I decided to just like fully color it in for a bit of a realistic-ish look. And then also darkening around the eyes. I really like to darken around the eyes with a more pigmented color to try to bring it out a little more, accentuate it. I don't know how to describe the word accentuate, but I think it's like bring it out. Also very lightly onto the lips, since I want to make the lips like look like they got color and like she's actually got lips, but I don't want to make it look really like defined. Anyway, so it's good that even with all of the shadows that I have, to have a really like pigmented color as I'm doing here, especially onto the skin, and especially since she's outside in a really bright environment, then there should be some pigmented colors because the skin was looking a little gray, a little dull, which it shouldn't look like that. Anyways, making a bunch of tiny lines on her nose, I don't understand why I did that, but I did, and I always will. Making a multiply layer, I take a color close to the skin and I just make big shadows, as I said, big boy shadows. And then I go in with the eraser to define it and give it more shape and make it make sense. As you can see I'm doing here. She kind of looks a little evil or angry or something. But anyways, so I also use the smudge brush. It's just on the regular smudge so that I just did the smudge brush so that it can soften up the shadows a bit, and I'm also erasing the shadow on the eyes. Since I usually shade the eyes on a separate piece, on a separate layer. Anyways, going back in again and again and again for more shadows on the hand. Also, I find it really useful to kind of shade your entire skin at one time. I know some people like shade one hand completely and then shade the other hand completely and then shade the face completely. But me being the extremely inconsistent person that I am, I need to shade everything in one go, or it will look messed up. Anyways, I also use other tones in the skin aside from pinks and oranges and like skin tones. I use blue, but I make sure to make it very, very, very subtle. Also, to give things a little more shape, I am using that thing. Okay, here is a little drawing that I'm going to put on the other side of the screen that I made. What I mean is, when you shade things, you need to follow the form. And I understand that some of you guys are like, the form? Because this is a 2D character, quite obviously. So what a lot of artists do, and what you need to do, what pretty much every artist does, is they think in 3D. But some people have a harder time than most. So what you can do is you can look at 3D models of heads, such as downloading an app called Magic Poser and stuff like that. Anyways, I alpha locked my layer so that nothing can go out, and I usually color the line art or sketch with bright colors, like with red colors. So first we shade everything with a dark red, and then we go over with a lighter red. And the lighter your line art is usually where the details are thinner or the places where light is hitting the most. Yeah. So as I was saying, if you don't know the form of things, then you can look at the reference that's on the side of the screen. Feel free to download it. Don't feel free to trace it. Don't trace it. Don't trace it. Please. And if you do trace it, if you decide to, you know what? Here's a fun little fact. Professional artists actually trace. They trace sometimes, and it does help them improve. Also, by the way, this is for the lighting tutorial on the skin. Using a purplish, pinkish, orangish colors, since you want to make the character match the background. Right now, it's very hot outside. It's like the afternoon. So you are going to be using like orange colors. Whereas if it was nighttime, you would use very desaturated blue or purple. And since it's daytime, we are using those orange colors. Also, here's a tip. Please figure out your background before doing your everything else. Also, why am I tapping green onto her skin? I bet some of you guys are asking. Because her background is green and skin is very reflective, especially if it's light. It's reflective because it's light. So that's why I'm putting green on her skin and on the bow. Anyways, that's on a screen layer. I'm still using the soft brush. So I'm just testing out how this would look. And now I am making some lighting on everything. This is pretty easy if you understand the form of things. I still sometimes struggle with the form of things. So yeah. Also, we are getting a red color. I tried to get a very pigmented I tried to get a very pigmented color for this but I miserably failed. Mostly because this was on a screen layer and it doesn't really agree with me. But there's a thing called surface scatter. Surface scatter, light scatter, surface scatter, I think. It's because there isn't really exactly just a solid transition when there is hard, bright lights and shadows. There's this very saturated, usually red color when those meet. So on a new layer with an airbrush, on an add layer, I am using a red to try to mimic that surface scatter effect. And I'm mostly only doing this on the skin since the skin is probably the brightest thing here. And I don't know, maybe I'm blind and stupid, but I only really usually see surface scatter mainly on the skin. It does happen on other things too, but I mainly see it on the skin. So here we go. And now we are using green on an overlay layer with an airbrush. The reason I'm doing this is to make the character blend with the background a lot more. Especially on the skin, because the skin is the lightest thing that we have here aside from the bow. I even put some of it on the chain and such, because to make your character match the background, you should also make colors on them, because if you're ever looking at yourself in public or something, or outside or in your house, anywhere, you can see that your background is kind of reflecting onto you. If you're in a blue room, you're gonna have tints of blue kind of reflecting on you, especially if you're very light-skinned or you're wearing a white shirt or something. Anyways, I hope this was useful to you, and I hope you guys like my new background and my new outro. That's right, I have an outro. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and see ya!